Well, hello, slingers. Welcome back to another Wordslinger Podcast. This is a special one. This is an anniversary episode, 12 years of Wordslinger Podcast. So, with some breaks, but we're going to talk about that in just a second, so stick around.
It's the Wordslinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger, and welcome to the 12th year of the Wordslinger Podcast. With a caveat, because there was that sort of 4-year gap in there where there were no episodes, and also a worldwide pandemic and some other things. So, but I was a wordslinger at heart. You were all slingers at heart, in my heart. So here we are. It's interesting to think about everything has changed. I started this show in 2013. I was living in a completely different house at that time. I had not yet worked for Draft Digital. I was writing science fiction and had not yet written a thriller, which has become the mainstay of my writing career. I still remember the first time. I still remember sitting in the little makeshift sound booth that I created. I'd already worked in film and TV and radio earlier in my career, and at this point, I was a marketing guy at a software company. I believe that's where I was. It's kind of hard to keep it all straight now, but I believe at that time, I had left my role as the director of marketing for a software company and was doing this novel writing thing full time. And, I was a big fan of the self-publishing podcast, which if you've listened to this show in the past, Johnny B. Truant was one of the three hosts of that. I've had him. I've had Sean Platt. The only one of the trio that I never managed to get on the show was David Wright. But I've had Johnny on numerous times, and he and I live kind of close to each other now, so we hang out every now and then. But, I was listening to those guys, and like every other writer at the time, every other self-published writer at that time, because I was a self-published writer, listening to podcasts, that meant I had to have a podcast. I had a background in radio and other media, so I had all this equipment laying around. I used to have a video production business, so I had like a couple $100,000 worth of equipment, and so I built a sound booth in a spare closet and sat to record every week. I didn't miss a week for a very long time. That would change later. But even when I was traveling, even when I would be out of state somewhere, I would, I'd have these interviews scheduled, or I'd have something set up where I needed to do that podcast. And so, I've recorded episodes out of cars, out of these spare conference rooms of small businesses that I was interacting with, clients, that sort of thing. I've done, of course, hotel rooms, you name it. Over the years, man, I have recorded episodes in some interesting places. I guess when you get to an anniversary episode, I guess you should be reflecting on what you learned from the whole experience, right? And in 12 years of doing this show and other podcasts, what are some things I've learned? First of all, I've learned how useful a podcast has been in connecting with the people I always wanted to connect with and learn from. Thanks to this podcast and the other podcasts that I've done, I've interviewed some of the biggest names in publishing. I've interviewed celebrities of film and TV. I've, connected with, people who are chiefs of industry for various industries, publishing mainly, but also, the Wordslinger podcast never discriminated against, guests from different industries. I always reached out to try to talk to people that I thought were going to have a great story, and I thought were going to be interesting. It's funny that this show has become known as a self-publishing podcast or a publishing podcast or a writing podcast. And the real truth of the whole thing is that I never really intended it for it to only be a writing podcast. It still isn't. It never has been. If you pay close attention, I talk to a lot of authors. I talk about writing a lot. It's true because that's who I am. It's part of my life, part of my career. But I also I've spent a lot of time talking about just other things that interest me. I've talked about history and archaeology, science. I've talked about technology. I've talked about a lot of those things, and I've had a lot of guests who may or may not have even written a book. So I've always tried to keep the format of the show open for that sort of thing. I've been lately leaning away from doing as many interviews as I was doing on this show because I do other podcasts where interviews are the whole thing. For example, the Writers Inc. podcast is an interview format show that I co-host with some other authors, and I love that show. And that's really been kind of the reason I wanted to pivot and do something a little different because I don't want to rehash. I was interviewing some of the same people I'd interviewed for this show, so I started shifting interviews over to that show as much as possible. But thanks to all that, like I've met some of my heroes, like Orson Scott Card. That interview is coming up in the next couple of months on Writers Inc. I may bring him on the Wordslinger podcast just because he and I have connected so well. But when I think about that, it's kind of mind blowing to me because he was such an important influence on my career, but also my life. And so being able to meet someone that's had that kind of impact on you is a blessing. It's a gift. There's been a lot of people like that over the years. I've interviewed James Rollins. He's become something of a friend. Maybe we don't pal around quite as much as me and Scott Card, but he's written some blurbs for me for some things. I connected with Steve Barry. He's doing some stuff like that for me. And of course, anytime they want that favor returned or anything else I can do for them, I'm there. But it's been a huge blessing to have this as a medium that allows me to make those connections. Some other things, I learned through the show about the power of consistency and discipline. I apply those things in my writing, of course, but having a venue where I have to produce content, I have to stay on top of it, and I'll confess that I've slacked off a little when it comes to this show, but it's also I consistently do the Writers Inc. podcast, for example, every single week. I don't think I've missed maybe 2 weeks since I started doing that show. I've seen the impact that it has, and the biggest impact is the importance that it takes on for the audience. When you as the listener or you as the viewer, when you start kind of counting on this content in a way, maybe not in some, it's not going to make much of a difference to you. It's not going to change your life if you don't see an episode 1 week or something. But I know what it's like to sort of connect with people, even if it's one way, through this kind of medium. Like it's, you start to feel like you have a personal relationship with somebody. I see the value of that, and I want to honor that. So I try to remain consistent in the content that I create because I owe it to you as a viewer, as a listener, as a reader, as however we're connecting with each other. All that, by the way, everything I've learned through the podcasting has translated into my writing career and vice versa. Consistency is important. It's key to success, I think, in in careers like these where, when you're producing content of any kind, a book, a blog post, a video, a podcast, whatever, consistency is how you get ahead. Your willingness to do the work, even when you're not going to get paid for it, even when there's no one watching or listening, your willingness to come back to it, that's the proof that is the pudding, right? What is that phrase, by the way? Do you know that I've heard that phrase at least 4 different ways in my life, and every time someone insists that it's the proper way? The proof is in the pudding. The proof is the eating of the pudding. The proof is the pudding. I don't know which one is right. You tell me. Reach out. Leave a comment and tell me which of those you've heard and why you think that's the one. One of the other benefits of podcasting is whenever I've been curious about something, it's given me an excuse to reach out to an expert. And I cannot overstate how powerful that is. Now, on the publishing and writing side, that's been invaluable to me. If not for podcasting, I wouldn't have connected with J.D. Barker. And the benefit of the two of us knowing each other, as I make a pivot in my writing career, he's been instrumental in that and helping in that. And, I owe him a debt of gratitude I'll never be able to fully repay. I've also, through the podcast, connected with, first of all, because of the Wordslinger podcast, it's what directly led to me working with Drafted Digital for 7 years. That work extended outward and helped me create a community or join a community and become known in that community. And so, it's like I can trace all the success I have now back to the Wordslinger podcast. So that's a big deal. I don't know. There's also something sort of personally fulfilling about this time that we have. Like, just taking the time to talk to you straight up. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I've observed. Here's my philosophy. Being able to share that, and often to hear back from people their take. Sometimes I'll say things that just piss people off. I get that. Not as frequently as you might think, though, unless you're just all rage quitting the show and not saying anything to me. If I ever say something that irks you, you are more than welcome to let me know. I remember saying something about, it was something race related. And I am a strong proponent that, our opportunities should have nothing to do with we should be looking for equality, not equity. I fall into that category. Now, whether you agree with that or not, I have had people. I had one gentleman reach out to who was offended by a statement I made, and what I did was set up a time to chat with him so that we could discuss it. And he was hesitant at first. He didn't know if he wanted to do that. I'm glad that he decided to do it, because what it did was it sort of changed my perspective a little on at least part of it. And now I can go forward with a new perspective on that. It goes a lot deeper than what I'm explaining. I just don't want to rehash old arguments or old problems, but I would like to think that he too got a good experience out of that, talking to someone he was pissed off at about something, because I thought we parted, if not friends, then at least friendly. And I was better off for having talked to him. I hope he was better off for having talked to me. So there's been those sorts of events. Something, I don't know. When I think about it, I'm just really grateful for what Wordslinger Podcast became. When I started it, it really was an excuse to just have something that would allow me to reach out and talk to people that I wanted to talk to. I want to interview. I would like to personally know this person, this author that I've read, and this actor that I've watched, or this person that operates a business that I utilize and frequent. And because I had the show as a sort of excuse to do that, it opened up a lot of doors for me. So if there's a lesson to learn there, it should be that. Now, are you going to do a podcast? Maybe that's just not your bag. But, I remember in college, one of my majors, and I've had several, one of my majors was mass media communications. So, writing for newspapers, things like that. I'd been doing that since high school. And, I had to reach out and interview people as part of my major. Like when I started an internship for a radio show, I had to interview people. I had to write articles and things like that. Having the show or having a newspaper or having something kind of behind me as a sort of excuse for reaching out to these people gave me credibility. Well, if you have a show on YouTube or a podcast, or if you have a blog where you discuss a topic, that's an excuse for you to reach out. If you're a writer, and I think most of you are, most of the people who pay attention to this show are writers in the writer space, and most of you are indie authors, you've got the perfect excuse to reach out to somebody. I don't care what you're writing. Let's say you're a romance writer. If you want to feature your two characters, let's say they are both, stationed in the Antarctic, you've got a great excuse to reach out to people who are stationed there or who have been and ask them questions. I can't emphasize enough how valuable it is to have a tool like this that you can leverage to talk to people. People are usually much more open, but I used to do informational interviews in college as well, because someone recommended that. And let's say I wanted to work in a certain field. That's where this started. I told a career counselor at my first university that I wanted to work in a certain field, and at that time it was engineering. And he told me to call up a bunch of engineering firms in the area that I might be interested in and ask them if I could do an informational interview to ask about their jobs, the roles that they have, personally, the company. And that was my foot in the door at a lot of these companies. So if you're looking for work, maybe take that approach. Instead of peppering the landscape with resumes, which is becoming less and less effective, call the companies that you most want to work for, that have the roles that you most want to have. Don't even check to see if they have openings. Just call them and say, "Hey, look, I'm doing an informational interview on this topic. Is there someone I could speak with?" Have your resume ready so that when you do talk to this person, you've got something that's in them. But if you've got something behind this, like a blog, you could say, "Look, I'm writing a blog post. I'm writing a book. I'm writing an article. I'm doing a video. I'm doing a podcast." If you've got something like that you can leverage to lend some credibility to what you're doing, when you call and say, "Look, I want to do some informational interviews. I'm interested in working in this field." You could just do it that way. "I'm interested in working in this field, so I'm calling and talking to people." There's a goodwill kind of thing that happens there. First of all, if you do have a publication or something, it's good PR for that company or that person. People love to see their name in print, unless it's negative, but in a positive way, they love to see it. They love to see that they were featured in something. It's a little something they can kind of put on their own resume. So if you leverage that, it'll connect you. There's this idea called reciprocity. And in general, when the form of it that I'm talking about, it would be not a tit for tat kind of thing. Don't make these calls expecting that if you give them some airtime or give them some space on your blog that they're going to give you a job. They might, but don't go in expecting that. Go in with sincerity. Go in with authenticity. Go in actually curious and actually eager to learn something, and you're going to come out much better, because even if they don't offer you anything or don't even care to offer you anything, you're going to gain some wisdom from that conversation that you can then apply to the next person you talk to. If you learn that, this engineering firm is doing XYZ, the next engineering firm you talk to may not be doing X, Y, or Z, or they may not be doing Y. And then you can say, I talked to so-and-so at such and such, and they're doing this, and that would probably help you. If you show yourself to be generous in your ideas, generous in your time, generous in your efforts to improve things, loyalty goes a long way. So just a lesson to keep in mind. Because I think too often what we do is we get locked into this idea that we should, especially when it comes to like the job hunt, like we get desperate, and that can be sensed right away. But if you're offering something instead of asking for something, there is that reciprocity effect that happens. Like if I'm calling up a company and saying, hey, look, don't say this, but like instead of saying, hey, I'm looking for work, what do you have open? Or instead of going on LinkedIn and finding like the openings and sending your resume to be, scanned by whatever AI tool they're using so that they can quickly eliminate you. Why not just call them up and say, I would love to chat with someone, maybe you've picked someone out, about topic X. When would be a good time? And show up for that interview fully professional, the sort of employee they might be interested in. Don't mention that you're looking for a job until the end, maybe. Don't ask for a job. You can just mention, hey, if anything opens up, this is the kind of company I'm really interested in. You could say that. Ask if you can tell them you'll send them the link to wherever this is going to go, if you're going to use it somewhere, or frankly, just thank them for talking to you if you're not going to publish it somewhere. And then you can always say, look, would it be all right if I sent you my resume? You can say that. They may ask for it. You just never know. The idea here, though, is don't go into this trying to manipulate anything and trying to get this gig by playing some sort of game. Gaming the system is always a bad idea. It always ends up biting you in the butt. So sometimes no, depends. If you're a good con man, gaming the system is part of the job, right? Anyway, that's, I don't know. Over the years, I've had so many things come my way because of the podcast or because of one podcast or another. So I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to you for being a part of it. 12 years is a long time. But even if it's only just the 8 years, it's still a long time. Especially for you to stick around. I appreciate you just sticking around through thick and thin. There's been a lot that's happened, and some of you have been here for it from the get-go, so I appreciate that. As far as things that are coming up, the future of the Wordslinger podcast, I wouldn't look for it to change too much in the near future. It's not something there was a point in my career where I thought I might try to turn this into a revenue generator, and I can do that. I've got people interested in sponsoring. I don't turn down sponsorships per se, but I'm also not actively going out to find them these days. And I see the show as kind of a service. But if there's ways I can help, if you want to, especially if you want to pay for something, pay for some airtime or something, we can work something out. But for the most part, it's just not really, I'm not set up to do it anymore. It's not really the direction I decided to go. This is part of my community service, I guess. In a way, I don't mind making money. I could use the cash, but I don't know. I don't do this. I do a lot. There's a lot in my life and career that I do for reasons other than money. I don't know what that means about me, but I guess they say if you would do it for free, then it's that's probably your real vocation. Writing, I definitely have done for free in my life. That's definitely the vocation of choice for me. Podcasting, any kind of broadcasts, I also have done for free quite a bit. So I don't know. There's a lesson to learn there. You tell me what it is. So at any rate, I'm really grateful that you're here. I'm grateful you're a part of the show. You're the most important part, really, because if you're not showing up to watch or showing up to listen, I'm just talking to myself, and I do that all the time. So I kind of bore myself. So, but thank you for being a part of the Wordslinger Podcast for 12 years. 12 years, man. It just keeps growing. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I appreciate you being here for this one. If you have questions, anything you want to add, feel free to do that in the comments on YouTube, on Substack. Go to wordslingerpodcast.com if you need to. You'll find all the links there. And that's going to do it. That's going to wrap us up. 12 years in the can. So take care of yourselves out there. God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful time. And I'm here to answer any questions you have about writing, publishing, or whatever. I'll be your stand-in stepdad or whatever, uncle. All right. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.